I walked into that shelter on a Tuesday morning. Rows of kennels, barking everywhere. So much noise you could barely hear yourself think. But then, silence. One cage in the corner. No barking. No wagging tail. Just a pair of tired brown eyes staring at the floor. A piece of paper taped to the glass said 2 words I'll never forget. Time's up. That was him. A dog nobody wanted. And that was the day everything changed. I remember asking the shelter volunteer about him. She sighed and said, "Honestly, you don't want that one. He's been here 6 months. Returned twice. He's broken. Broken." That word hit me like a punch to the chest. I looked back at him. He was a mixed breed. Maybe some lab, maybe some pit. Hard to tell. His ribs showed through his dull brown fur. He had a scar across his nose. And his eyes. His eyes looked like he had already given up on people entirely. The volunteer told me his name was Bruno. She said he was scheduled to be put down in 2 days. 2 days. I wasn't even looking to adopt a dog that day. I just went to donate some old blankets. But something about Bruno wouldn't let me walk away. I asked if I could meet him in the visiting room. The volunteer looked surprised. "He won't come to you," she warned. "He doesn't come to anyone anymore." She was right. I sat on the cold concrete floor for 15 minutes. Bruno stayed in the corner. Didn't move. Didn't look up. Didn't make a sound. Most dogs at shelters jump on the gate, desperate for attention. Bruno did the opposite. He had learned that attention from humans meant disappointment. So he just waited. Waited for nothing. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his face. Those empty eyes. That sign. Time's up. My apartment doesn't even allow dogs. I had no plan. No supplies. No experience with traumatized rescue dogs. Logic said this was a terrible idea. But my gut said something different. The next morning, I called the shelter. "I'm coming for Bruno," I said. Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you sure?" No. I wasn't sure at all, but I was coming. When I walked in with the leash, the staff actually gathered around. One of them had tears in her eyes. "Nobody ever came back for him," she whispered. Not after the second return. The adoption process took 30 minutes. Bruno didn't wag his tail when I approached his kennel. He just pressed himself further into the corner. I had to carry him out. All 40 pounds of him, shaking in my arms. The car ride home was completely silent. He curled up in the passenger seat, facing away from me, staring out the window like I was just another person who would eventually let him down. I talked to him anyway. "I know you don't trust me yet, buddy. And that's okay. We've got time." Day 1 at home was a disaster. I set up a soft bed in the corner of my living room. Bruno ignored it completely and crawled behind the couch instead. He stayed there for 4 hours. I put out fresh food and water. He didn't touch it. I tried to pet him once, just gently on the back, and he flinched so hard he knocked over a lamp. I felt terrible. This wasn't like the happy adoption videos you see online. This was painful. This was a dog who had been broken by the very species that was supposed to protect him. I sat on the floor across the room and just talked softly for an hour. I told him about my day. I told him he was safe. I don't know if he understood, but his ears twitched. Now, here's something most people don't realize about rescue dogs. When a dog is abandoned or returned multiple times, their brain chemistry actually changes. Studies show that chronic stress in shelter dogs elevates their cortisol levels so high that it can take up to 3 months just for those levels to return to normal. 3 months. This isn't just sadness. It's trauma. It's a physical condition. Bruno wasn't being difficult. His body was literally stuck in survival mode. Every sound, every sudden movement, every raised hand meant danger to him. Someone in his past had taught him that humans hurt, and unlearning that lesson takes time. Day 3. Something small happened. I was making coffee in the kitchen when I heard a noise behind me. I turned around slowly and there he was, Bruno, standing in the doorway, still head down. Still no tail wag, but he had come out from behind the couch on his own for the first time. I didn't make a big deal about it. I just said, "Good morning, Bruno. Want some breakfast?" And I put his food down. He waited until I stepped back. Then he ate, and I swear I felt like I had just won an Oscar. It was the smallest victory, but it was everything. Nighttime was hard. Bruno would pace for hours. 3 in the morning, I'd hear his nails clicking on the floor. Click, 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 back and forth, back and forth. He couldn't settle. I read online that rescue dogs often struggle with darkness because that's when they feel most vulnerable, so I started leaving a small nightlight on for him. I also left one of my old t-shirts in his bed, something with my scent on it. The pacing slowly stopped, and one morning I woke up to find him sleeping on that t-shirt, his head resting right on the sleeve. That was the first moment I thought, maybe he's starting to believe he's home. Let's pause the story here for a moment, because what happens in the next part, you need to see to believe. Day 30 was not just a transformation, it was a completely different dog. But before we get there, I want to ask you something. If this story has touched your heart even a little bit, hit that like button right now. It helps more rescue dogs get seen. And subscribe with notifications on, because part 2 of Bruno's journey is something I promise you have never witnessed before. The moment he finally trusted me changed both of our lives forever. You don't want to miss what happens next. I'll see you in part 2. And then came day 30. I still remember waking up that morning. Sunlight was coming through the curtains. I opened my eyes, and there was Bruno. Not behind the couch, not hiding in the corner. He was sitting right next to my bed, just sitting there, waiting. When he saw me wake up, something happened that I had been hoping for since day 1. His tail moved, just a little. A small, hesitant wag, like he was testing the water, like he wasn't sure if happiness was allowed. I held my breath. I didn't want to scare the moment away. I just whispered, "Hey, buddy," and that tiny wag grew. Slowly, shyly, but it grew. I got out of bed and he didn't run. He followed me to the kitchen. For the first time, he walked beside me instead of behind me. His head was still a little low, but his eyes were different. The emptiness was gone. There was something new there, something fragile, something that looked a lot like hope. I poured his food, and he didn't wait for me to step back this time. He ate right in front of me. And when he finished, he looked up, right into my eyes. People say dogs don't smile. Those people never met Bruno on day 30. Later that afternoon, I decided to try something I had been avoiding: the leash. Bruno had terrible associations with leashes. In the shelter, the leash meant being dragged somewhere new. It meant another abandonment, another stranger, another cold floor. When I picked it up, he flinched. Old habits die hard. But I sat down on the floor and placed the leash between us. I didn't force it. I just let it sit there. And then Bruno did something remarkable. He walked over to the leash. He sniffed it, and then he nuzzled my hand. He was telling me he was ready. It took 10 minutes to clip it on. 10 minutes of soft words and gentle movements. But we did it. We walked outside together, just to the end of the street and back. 5 minutes. That's all. But to Bruno, it was a marathon of courage. Every car that passed made him flinch. Every stranger walking by made him press close to my leg. But he didn't panic. He didn't shut down. He trusted me to keep him safe. By the time we got back to the apartment, my eyes were watering. I sat on the floor and he climbed into my lap. 40 pounds of rescue dog, curled up like a puppy. And for the first time, I heard his tail thumping against the floor. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of a dog who had decided to live again. You need to understand something. What happened in those 30 days was not magic. It was not luck. It was patience so hard, it hurt. There were days I cried because I thought I couldn't reach him. There were days I questioned if I was the right person for this. But let me tell you a surprising fact about traumatized dogs. When they finally do bond with you, the connection is deeper than anything you can imagine. Scientists call it hyperbonding because they know what loss feels like. They value love more than dogs who have never suffered. Bruno doesn't just like me. He would walk through fire for me, and I would do the same for him. Now, here is where the story gets really special. About 2 months after day 30, I was walking Bruno in the park. An elderly woman approached us. She was maybe 80 years old, walking with a cane, moving very slowly. Bruno, who used to hide from strangers, did something that stopped me in my tracks. He walked toward her, gently, slowly, and he sat down at her feet. The woman smiled and reached down with a shaky hand. "What a beautiful dog," she said. "What's his name?" I told her Bruno. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You know, he looks just like a dog I used to see at the shelter. I would visit him every week. I couldn't adopt him because of my living situation, but I prayed someone would take him. Every night, I prayed." I couldn't speak for a moment. This woman, this complete stranger. She had been praying for Bruno, weeks before I ever walked into that shelter. Weeks before I saw that piece of paper that said, "Time's up." She'd been loving him from a distance. Bruno remembered her too. I could see it in the way he rested his head on her shoe. He didn't forget. Dogs never forget kindness, even if it comes just once a week, through kennel bars. The three of us sat on that park bench for an hour. The woman, whose name was Margaret, told me Bruno used to cry at night in the shelter. She would hear him from the hallway. "He had the saddest howl," she said. "It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like he was trying not to bother anyone with his pain." And I realized that broken dogs don't howl for attention. They howl because hope is leaving their body. And Bruno's hope was almost gone. 2 days away from being gone, forever. Margaret visits us now, every Sunday. She brings Bruno treats. He waits by the door for her, tail wagging, eyes bright. The same dog who once hid behind my couch now greets her like she is the sun itself. And I sit back and watch them and think about how close this all came to never happening. One different choice, one moment of hesitation, and Bruno would be a memory instead of a miracle. So here is the truth I want to leave you with. The shelter dogs nobody wants are not broken beyond repair. They are not lost causes. They are not damaged goods. They are just waiting. Waiting for someone to see past the fear, past the scars, past the label that says unlovable. Because underneath all that is the most loyal, most grateful, most incredible friend you will ever know. Bruno is not the dog I rescued. He is the dog who rescued me. On my hardest days, he reminds me that healing is possible, that second chances are real, that love, when given time and patience, always wins. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe to this channel. Every new subscriber helps us share more rescue stories, stories that save lives. Hit that like button for Bruno. Leave a comment below. Tell me about a dog who changed your life. I read every single one. And if you are thinking about adopting, walk into that shelter and look for the one in the corner, the quiet one, the one nobody wants. Because that one just might be your Bruno. I will see you in the next video. And remember, adopt, don't shop. There is a miracle waiting in a cage right now. All you have to do is say yes.